But I just want to say to everybody that this is perfect timing, because Sue here was the inspiration for this whole program. A long time ago, a year ago, we were at the Forge for an Earth Day event. And we had a booth and we were talking to people at the booth. And Sue said, I would really like to get more involved and spread the word about native plants, but I don't know what to say. And so then Mary, who's our board vice president and has like a master's degree in environmental science, she piped up and she said, yeah, I don't know what to say either. So we thought more people could spread the word if they just knew how to start that conversation. So that was something that we've been brainstorming on and working on. You know, we as an organization, we go around and we give presentations. We talk at park districts, we talk at libraries, we talk on webinars, we invite people in for webinars, we go to talk to groups. We're going to talk to Lyons Township, you know, in a couple weeks. So we go and we talk, and that's great. And we connect with some amazing people and some amazing people that step forward and help us out. But we also know that if this movement of trying to get more native plants into our landscapes to help our local ecosystem and help our environment, we also realize that we're not gonna do that this way. I mean, we're gonna get people involved and get people, but the majority of people are not willing to come out and listen to me drone on for an hour and a half about native plants. People who are already interested in plants, people who are already a little bit interested in native plants because somebody put the bug in their ear why they're important, might say, Debbie was telling me something about that, and look at this talk being offered at the center or being offered at the park district or this webinar. Maybe we should check in and see a little bit more what this is all about. But we're really, as an organization, trying to reach not the avid gardeners, them too, but not the hobbyists who just are like me, who they would love to spend a whole day out in the garden, but the average person who might have family, who owns land, who owns property, who might have 2 jobs, 2 or 3 kids. They're busy and they're not going to be a hobbyist, but they also, if they know the importance of it, they might be willing to do what they can as the opportunity presents itself. So we look at ourselves as not an organization trying to create a group of native plant nerds. We love our native plant nerds, and we're native plant nerds, and we love to get together and have a cocktail and talk about native plants. But we're not trying to be just a group of native plant nerds. We have this lofty goal, imagine this, of trying to change the way everyday people think about the plants that surround them, to realize the power of those plants, to realize the importance of those plants, and to realize how detrimental it was unknowingly to all of us, how when those plants about 50 years ago started being removed from our landscapes and replaced with foreign plants from Europe and Asia, and what a catastrophic effect that was having on the ecosystem. And it's just over the past 10-20 years that we're really starting to see the effects of that, and how damaging it has been, and how it is killing off our insects because they don't have the native plants anymore that they need to reproduce, and because we're killing off so many of our beneficial insects, we're killing off birds because they don't have the insects to feed their young. And all of this is coming back to affect humans. We can't survive without those insects either, and we can't survive without birds. So now it's trying to turn this around. So that being said, what we're hoping is to, by being an ambassador for native plants, we don't consider this being a volunteer for Sag Moraine. If you ever do volunteer for Sag Moraine, that would be wonderful and we love you. But this is just how to be an ambassador to get more native plants in our landscapes anywhere in your social circle that you can, how to have that conversation, what you can say, what are some facts that you can say, what are some conversation starters, what are some things that you can say, whether it's to your neighbor or to your sister or to your HOA or to your mayor or to your trustees or to your boss at work who has like massive lawn outside of the building, whoever it is that is in your social circle or in your life, trying to help just get that word out, because attention span isn't real good. And like I said, I can go around and I can give all these long talks and I think they're quite compelling. No. But I'm not going to reach the majority of people. Majority of people aren't going to sign up for that. So the best way that we can reach people is just people reaching out to other people. And it's hard. I remember when we first, got involved with this organization and started, it was like, okay, what's our line? What's our line when we first meet somebody? Like, well, what is Sag Moraine? What are you all about? That was hard to come up with at the beginning. Like, what do you say to people to describe what you're even about? I mean, so just trying to convey the problem and the solution in a succinct way that just captures attention. And then if you can capture somebody's attention, then maybe they'll look further and they'll come to some of our other resources that will help them if they want to go the next step. So what I want to share with you some things tonight that we've created to help with that. And like I was saying, when I first came on, bear in mind that this is the start of this program, and we hope that this is an ever evolving program to provide resources to help people plant native, but also help people get more people planting native. Does that make sense? Or am I just rambling again? Okay, so I am going to share my screen. And the first thing I want to go to is we gave a presentation at Wild Things conference this year at the Donald E. Stevenson Convention Center in February. And we were creating that, and we wanted to kind of come up with some statements that sort of define who we are, Sag Moraine, as a group and as an organization, and how we kind of differ from some other organizations. And these are some of the statements that we came up with. And some of these things we feel are, we've been having some, what I would consider some amazing success for the age of this organization. And I think it's because of some of these, I don't want to say rules, but some of these ideas that we really hold to, which believe it or not is pretty different than a lot of organizations that talk about native plants. We always keep it positive. There's a lot of times you read an environmental thing and it's like this big depressing thing, like, I love animals. Oh my God, I love animals. Those ASPCA commercials, I turn them off. I can't look at it. That doesn't make me donate. It makes me run out of the room. Do you know what I mean? It's like you're being, shamed, or it's just too much to take in. So we don't want to become, is anybody here old enough to remember that character on Saturday Night Live, Debbie Downer? So we don't want to be just like, Debbie Downers, because then people will tune us out and it's just like, oh, there's those wacky environmentalists shaming us again, or telling us how horrible we are and how bad we are because we just used a plastic bottle today, and there they are again. So we really try to keep it more positive and more not about shaming what we've done, because we've all participated in unwittingly, unknowingly to what happened, but focusing more on what we can do to change it, and not what we've done to create a problem. We never shame people for not doing enough. We're not the type, we don't want to, there are some organizations, and I'm not gonna, name any names, and they mean well, and they're reaching their own group, but they come out with checklists and see if you've done enough to get a certification and things like that. And we never want to tell people, well, I mean, you planted that nice native tree and you planted that little pollinator garden by your patio, but you really should do more if you want to like really be a good person. Anything they do, applaud, even if it is just a native shrub. It's still a step in the right direction. We respect that many people don't have the time, resources, or inclination to do much. And that gets back to some people, oh, you need to remove your whole lawn, or you need to remove most of your lawn, and then you need to convert it all to a prairie. And before you know it, these people are spending hours and hours a week out there, or maybe they don't have the money to do that, but they can still do something, even if it's just a pot on their big pot on their patio. They can still do something. So, respecting that, different people have different levels of limitations. We applaud all efforts, as I said, even the small ones. We always remember, and this is what we try to do, and this is hard, the more we learn and the more we grow to love these native plants. I mean, when you start out, you're not that familiar with them, and then the more you work with them, the more you see them, and the more you see what they do to the ecosystem in your backyard, the more you just grow to love these plants. And the more you learn about what damage we've done by removing these plants and how critical they are, you start to lose the focus of who you were at the beginning. And I'll admit to you, at the beginning, when I first learned about this, I thought, oh, this is important. And so I went to a local native plant sale and I bought a package. And I planted the package behind my garage because I didn't want to look at it. I wanted them there, but it was behind the garage, because I thought, oh, it's going to be this, wild weedy thing, but, let all the critters go back there, and I'm going to keep my geraniums up by the patio. And then, of course, I learned more, and I saw those plants when they grew, and I saw, wow, these don't belong behind the garage. These are the most beautiful things in my yard. And so, but I always want to remember back to that time when I didn't know a thing, and how do I reach a person who had the mental state that I had at that time, as opposed to now. We try to make it cheerful, beautiful, and fun. Sue's real good at that. I kind of drone on, but Sue's fun. We make people empowered, to really feel like they're making a difference, even with small efforts. And I think that's something that we all need right now. We live in a pretty negative world. We've been through a really tough time. And, we all know that there's problems with our environment. There's problems with our climate and so on. But we don't want to just focus on that negative. This feels like people in their own place and have control over what's in their own property, and they can really make a difference there. So it's very empowering. We can't save the world, but we can make a difference with our little part of it. We promote using native plants and landscapes in a way that will appeal to and inspire other members of the community. This, I think, is huge. I mean, I attended a webinar once, and they were talking about the person who was giving the webinar was proudly showing the 150 native plants that she had fit into her parkway. And this was not like thought out. This was just, oh, I can put this here. And this was just, and so to the average person that was walking by, this probably looked like, oh my God, you know what I mean? This is, a prairie in the parkway. And then you get neighbors complaining. But if she had done something in the parkway that was an attractive tree and surrounded with some plants and maybe a little area of grass to make this all look deliberate, and attractive, then we're going to get more people on board. So maybe, yeah, maybe you only are going to fit 60 plants in looking nice rather than 150 plants looking just like a solid mess. But if you're going to, inspire, Sue, Mabel, and Tom down the street to do the same thing, in the long run, it's going to mean a lot more native plants. Another thing that we do is we never get political. You'll never see in any of our messages or our social media anything that is political, because no matter what you say about anything, you're going to alienate 50% of people, and we can't afford to alienate anybody. Everybody who has land, it's important to hear this message. So that's just some things I wanted to share with you about who we see ourselves as an organization. For those of you like Debbie, you weren't real familiar with us. You just learned about us recently at a webinar. And now I want to talk about, does anybody have any questions about that before I move on and drone on about something else? No, that was so riveting. You can't even think of a question. So now let me go to our website. Okay, so what we want to do and what we have started doing and what we plan to add to is resources to help people tell people about native plants. And that's what we consider being an ambassador for native plants. That is under what you can do in our menu. And if you go down to become an ambassador for native plants, and then you go over to Native Plant Ambassador Tools and click on that, these are the tools that we have developed so far. That you could print, that you could hand somebody, that you could just, memorize some facts off of it. So the first one we have is give it a minute. They're loading slowly. I kind of wanted to go over this one first. Come on, there you are. So this is one that basically what we consider, what is the role of a native plant ambassador. A native plant ambassador is someone who increases awareness of the benefits of native plants have on our environment and advocates getting more native plants in the ground. And again, where does advocacy begin? It begins at a talk with your sister on Mother's Day. It begins talking over the fence with your neighbor. It begins, going to one of your HOA meetings or your town meetings. It can begin in any conversation that we have, a conversation at work, a conversation at one of your kids, sporting events, to one of the other moms. I mean, anywhere you're talking to somebody is where advocacy can begin. And then I do want to go over like this a little bit for those of you who aren't real sure, is when we're talking about an advocate for native plants, what really is a native plant? And according to the USDA, a native plant is one that is a part of the balance of nature that has developed over hundreds or thousands of years in a particular region. And native plant communities are a vital part of the local ecosystem, which is a geographic area where plants, animals, and other organisms, as well as weather and landscapes, interconnect. A non-native plant has been introduced from somewhere else in the world, intentionally or non-intentionally. What are the benefits of native plants? I mean, basically native plants, and I'll talk about this a little bit when we do the talking points, but native plants are the foundation of our food chain. Insects that feed off of these plants are the foundation of our food chain, and they take nutrients from the sun that gets into plants and they transfer it to animals. So the insects get the nutrients, and then they're eaten by the birds, or other animals are eating those plants, and then it goes up the food chain. As I said, we can't, and we do in our talks, we can't, our bees, our pollinators, yes, they are very important for our food supply. Much of our food, it needs to be pollinated by pollinators. But even more so than that, those pollinated plants are vital to the air we breathe, the quality of the air we breathe, the quality of the water we drink. Those things are actually our weather. Pollinated plants are responsible for our weather. So those things are actually even more important than our food. Our diet would be, there are a number of wind pollinated plants that we could probably survive on, not thrive, but survive. We could live on wheat and corn. That doesn't require pollinators to pollinate. But most of our highly nutritious plants do require pollinators to pollinate. So we could survive on it, but we can't survive without air, and we can't survive without clean water, and we can't survive if our weather is crazy and we don't have enough rain, or we have terrible droughts, or so on. And these are all things that pollination is key for. I mean, we've all, a lot of us, I remember being just, flabbergasted in school when I learned that what happens in the rainforest is the lungs of the earth, how vital that rainforest is to create the weather even up here. So all of that, everything that we need for life is actually being made possible by plants. And those plants are made possible because they're pollinated and they can reproduce. Does someone need to plant a huge pollinator garden to make a difference? We really feel that if we can get a lot of people doing a little bit, that's going to have more impact than a few people doing a lot. So no, I mean, it can be a pot, it can be a small pollinator garden. And chances are when people start doing a little bit and they see the difference that it makes, and they see how alive their garden becomes, as their time and their finances allow, I bet that they will answer more. They will add more. But the key is to try to change the way people think about plants. Even if somebody doesn't remove anything they have, if from a conversation they had with us or something we say to them, if from here on out, whenever they do need to purchase a plant for their house, if a tree dies, if a shrub dies, if they want to, put a hedge in, to block out something, if they think, oh, we learned that we need to try to go native. And so if we just get everybody aware of that moving forward, they don't have to turn everything on end now. Just moving forward, please choose native whenever you're going to buy a plant for your landscape. Where can I find information on specific native plants? I'll show you that on the website. And where can I find information on native plants in general? So this is just a little bit of an idea of what what are we talking about when we talk about a native plant ambassador? But now we have this next one. So this is some talking points that I came up with, that we came up with. How to get somebody's attention. And basically this is some facts that can sort of, help you have this conversation. Like, boy, isn't it terrible how we've lost 3 billion birds in the last 30 years, mostly because we've removed all native plants from our landscapes? What, 3 billion birds are gone? Really? Yeah, I mean, you should check it out. It's terrible. So things like, facts like that can stick in people's minds. I remember one day I was getting an awning put on my patio. This was last year. And the woman came with fabric samples, and she was sitting on the patio and she's looking around my yard, and she goes, "Oh, you have a lovely yard. I can see you have a lot of plants." And I said, "Yeah, I'm getting more and more native plants in my yard." And I said, because I'm looking at these fabric samples, and I'm telling her about why I believe in native plants. And I told her about the pollinators and the insects and the birds and so on. And I look up, and she's just got her mouth hanging open, and she's saying, "Well, people should know that. Who knows this?" She said, "I've been gardening for years. I had no idea that made a difference." So it is it is kind of shocking when people hear some of this stuff for the first time. And we assume that people know this because we know this. I am, we think it's in the news. It is in the news. We think that, you read about when you're looking for this stuff, you find it in the newspapers, you find it online. But I can tell you, it's amazing when we go and give presentations, how few people have heard this. They don't know this stuff. When you talk to people on the street, they're not going to say, oh yeah, I heard, yeah, our bees are done. Most people are not tuned into this, to that, even though it is in the news. They're not tuned into it. So, just some key facts that might help, like pollination is key to the production of oxygen, I said. Pollinated plants sequester carbon and combat climate change. So if you know somebody who is really concerned about climate change, that's something that does get a lot of buzz. Well, do you know that they're thinking now that one of the main causes of climate change is a decrease in pollinators and not enough pollinated plants in our environment, and the removal of so many plants. And pollinated, and then you could say pollinated plants, again, like I said, help to purify our water and prevent erosion. You tell people, if somebody has problems with flooding or water, and there's some places where the whole town has problems with flooding and water. Well, why is that? Because they've made houses bigger, they've made more hardscape, and they've removed green areas, and they've removed the native plants that can absorb a lot of the water, which I'll show you in a little bit. You can say pollinated plants return moisture to the atmosphere and control our weather, and are responsible for more than 150 food crops. Native bees are our most efficient pollinators, not the European honeybee. In fact, the European honeybee, while it's necessary in our agricultural areas, is actually contributing to the decline of our native bees. So somebody who's raising honeybees isn't necessarily helping our environment. They're hurting our native bees, and our native bees are the ones who are, many of which are going extinct. Now look at facts like this. If you run this by somebody, the Midwest habitat loss has caused the Midwest to lose half of its native bees this century. Think of that. I mean, think of that within, your parents' lifetime. Half of our native bees are gone. That's just crazy how quick that has happened. Loss of plant diversity or native plants is the primary cause of this native bee decline. About 30 to 50% of all native bees are highly specialized. This means that they can only use the pollen of one species of native plant to feed their young. If that plant disappears from our landscapes, those bees will disappear as well. And that's what happened. Our native prairie plants completely disappeared from our landscapes. But there's other beneficial insects that are also disappearing at a shocking rate. We've all heard about the monarch butterflies. Their numbers are down about 96% in recent decades. They are on the endangered species list. What's the reason for it? Number one reason, milkweed was removed from our landscapes. And until we get enough milkweed back into our landscapes, they, if we don't, and Illinois is an extremely important state for this, because they migrate right through Illinois and it's a long state. They will go extinct, and they've become a poster child of this issue. But this is going on across all of our, butterfly and moth and many other beneficial insects. They don't have the native plants anymore that they need to feed their young. So this has been a big contributing factor to the fact, look at this, the world's insect population has declined 30% in 3 decades, that we're losing 10% of our insects per decade. And that is just crazy fast how this is happening. Remember, we've only been planting all these had big expansions of our suburbia and all of the things that have been very damaging, like our our suburban sprawl and our big lawns and our industrialized farming and all of the things that have led to these plants disappearing, and the consideration that native plants, you know, the ones that people grew up with, they're boring. We need to get these exotic plants in from China. And so this was all what our horticulture industry has been pushing for about the last 50 years. And it's amazing how in that last 50 years, how quickly this kind of damage can be done. I mean, if this is in 30% in 3 decades, what's going to happen to your kids and grandkids? What's it going to be like then if we don't turn this around? So another fact, many of our beneficial insects cannot reproduce without native plants. These are just some bullet facts. This decline in insects has been catastrophic to many of our native birds. We've lost 3 billion birds in recent decades. They don't have enough insects to feed their young, and butterfly and moth caterpillars are the best source of food for nesting birds. Most species of butterflies and moths are declining drastically due to the lack of native plants. This has a great impact, and if anybody says, well, what's the big deal about birds? Well, we can't survive without birds. That's the key. I mean, some people, you know, some of us are animal lovers and we like to do things in the garden just because, oh, isn't that cute, or isn't that butterfly pretty, or whatever. But trying to get people to understand that these critters, these insects that they think are icky, if those insects don't exist, humanity doesn't exist. And birds are a little bit of an easier sell because they're cuter. Same thing, if they cease to exist and they continue to decline like this, humanity will follow. We can't survive without them. And then here's some, you know, there's some things listed here about what it is that birds do that are so important to humanity. So we can't just say, oh, well, birds are existing. Oh, well, your great-grandchild's not going to exist either. You know, I mean, we have to bring it back to show people that how important it is to humanity, that this is, you know, why this is such an issue. If all insects on Earth disappeared within 50 years, all life on Earth would end. I mean, that is pretty shocking and crazy, and it's almost the case in parts of Europe. Parts of Europe are even further ahead. I was talking recently to the director of Lake Catherine, and he comes from England, and he said, oh, we have in England, there's no insects left. We're like, you know, a couple decades ahead of you guys in regards to killing them off. And we're really, you know, struggling to try to make a difference, you know, at this point, because it's so far gone. What can we do to help? Plant native. And truly, the problem can't be solved by government. 85% of Illinois is privately owned. So government doesn't have the power to really make a huge difference. Who can make a huge difference are all private landowners, whether it be business owners or homeowners or people who have influence over land, like townships and so on. But landowners or people who have influence over land are the only ones who can have a hope of turning this around. I know I said I'd stay positive, but for you guys, I don't have to. So then on here, we have this is something that might help you. Okay, let's say that your neighbor says, okay, where can I get native plants? You know, you tell me to get native plants, where can I get them? So here, other than your spring native plant sales, here's a list of places in our area where you can get native plants most of the year. Some of them are wholesalers, but they do allow you to purchase some or larger ones, or come and get them. And some are, friendlier to individuals than others, and they are trying to step up and become easier to work with and not just be wholesalers. So there is an effort afoot to do that. If you want,
I'm sorry.
yes.
Is that list of the landscape or where you can get the flowers, is that on the website somewhere?
It is. Well, this,
Okay.
this whole thing I'm showing you right now is on our website.
Okay, great, thank
So
you.
this, and I'll show you again where that is. So this is a list of area native plant. You know, there are some more way up north, but this is ones that are like in our close enough to our, you know, southwest suburban area.
Okay, thank you.
And then we have,
Those are wholesalers though, Kathy? I'm sorry.
so some of them are wholesalers, but I will say like Possibility Place. They will let you order like a flat. If you're ordering, if you want a tree, like you can go out to Possibility Place and buy a tree and bring a native tree and bring it home. So the bigger ones, yes, you can buy individuals there. Smaller
Yeah.
plants, they want you to do it by the flat. Native
Okay.
Roots and Canopies, they're out in Mokina. They are mostly trees and shrubs, and they're individual. Natural Communities is a really nice one. That's kind of a middleman, just like the native plant sales. Yeah, our spring native plant sales, they become fundraisers for organizations, but they're really critical in just getting native plants affordably into people's hands, because it's hard to go someplace and buy one or two, you know. And that, and you know, since we're talking about, that's another like really amazing way that we can advocate for this, because if native plants were easier to get, more people would plant them. So when you are in garden centers this spring, even though you know they're going to say no, go up to them and say, hey, do you carry any native plants? Just so the more people that ask them that, the more they'll think, hey, maybe there's a market here, and we'll start carrying them, because the easier they are to get. I mean, if we could walk into, you know, whatever, I mean, it'll probably be a long time before we can get them at Home Depot or anything, and God knows what chemical they'd have on them. But any of your you know, privately owned landscape companies, I mean, they're gonna carry what sells. And if they get wind that there are a lot of people that want them, then they will. Prairie Friends Native Plant, they do online orders, and they will bring them out to your house. They will drive them out to your house. That's Prairie Friends. Prairie Wind, it's by appointment. He grows lovely plants, but it's in a gentleman's home in Glen Ellen, and so it's by appointment, but he sells lovely plants there. Stellar Native Plant Nursery, I'm very interested to see his plants. He's going to set up a booth at our plant sale, and he is in where is he? I think it's St. Charles, but he is also a native plant. He's a native plant grower and landscaper, and he will work in the southwest suburbs as well. And then Van Goer's Greenhouse in Hinsdale does have some. And if you're looking for somebody to actually design a garden for you, whether they just design it and you put it in, or if you want them to design it and install it here, and hopefully more will come as you know, as time goes on. But these are for native plant landscapers and designers that will work in the southwest suburbs. So there's that resource to share with people. Now we have, okay, so you're talking to Jane next door, and she says, you know what, I'd love to plant them, but I have a black thumb. I can't grow a plant for anything. There's this one, and when you go on the website, usually these are all showing, but for something's kind of buggy tonight. Here's a list of top 10 Illinois native plants that are easy to grow. Whether you're a beginner or somebody who doesn't have much time to work in the garden, here are 10 native plants that are easy, hardy, and great for our ecosystem. Hand her this and say, here, anybody can grow these. If these are in the right location, which I'll show you something in a moment, if these are in the right location, you virtually have to do nothing. I mean, I've never known anybody who can't grow a black-eyed Susan, or who can't grow, you know, prairie dropseed or purple coneflower. These are beautiful plants that take such minimal effort, and they're just so adaptable and so hardy. So here's a list to give people to start with that really feel that they don't have a lot of time or talent in the garden. Let's say
Are these also plants that are easy to find? I know black-eyed Susan is, but just out of curiosity.
these are all pretty
Okay.
common ones. You may not be familiar with some of these sedges, but sedges are really important, and sedges can add a touch of structure to a landscape to make it look not like a prairie, but make it look like a deliberate landscape, if that makes sense. Adding
It's kind of like a
sedges.
grass, right? Like a
They're like a short
low-growing-
grass.
Yeah, short grass. Okay.
Right, so they give you different textures, so you have an area of like, lower sedges and then a little bit taller plants in back, and so you can create more of what our vision is become used to, of areas of grass and then areas of flowers, as opposed to just prairie look.
Right, like a mess.
Yeah, like a mess. So
Yeah.
these are all very easy ones to get. Yes, these
Okay.
are very popular ones. Then we have, okay, do you know anybody who's got problems, who's got an area of their yard that is prone to flooding, that is wet? Or do you know anybody who lives in a suburb that has a lot of problems with this? Well, here's some really attractive, nice native plants that are conducive for suburban landscapes, that are great for flood control. So tell people, you got that area in the back of your yard, here's some native plants that are going to help you, that not only are going to grow back there, but they're going to help absorb that water and eliminate some of the problems that you have. So here are some of the really good ones for that to recommend to people. And I know you're thinking, well, how do I know? What do they do? Swamp rose mallow, they're not going to know what the heck. I'm going to show you something else at the end here that will kind of bring this all together. Now, let's say you do live in a condo or a townhome, or even just a subdivision of homes that has an association, and you have to follow the rules of the association. And some associations have lists of approved plants that people can use in their landscapes. Well, rather than, I think that the key, and I understand associations, they don't want craziness, they're looking for uniformity and so on. I think the best way that we can start making a dent, because if you go further west, the western suburbs, it's hard to find a subdivision that doesn't have some kind of a homeowners association involved, even for houses. And if we don't start getting some of these homeowners associations on board, and I personally think that the best way we're going to do that is not say, darn it, you got to let us plant native plants. Let's try to take 10 really, or 11 really, really safe native plants that can be very uniform, that are not going to get very big, that are not going to go crazy, that are not going to spread all over, that are going to stay nice and structured, that they can keep their landscapes looking like traditional landscapes, but incorporate some of these native plants in it. And some of them are, like the sedges we mentioned. Some of them are like butterfly weed, which is a great low growing mounding plant. Lead plant, the same thing, that's kind of like a small shrub. New Jersey tea, a small white shrub. Prairie dropseed, a beautiful grass. And then some other small trees and shrubs that would be just wonderful additions to their landscapes that are more shrub friendly than perennial friendly, if they want more shrubs. Nice, small, flowering, well-behaved, easy to trim, small trees and shrubs. So if we could just get them to add these plants to their list, that would be a huge win. Then what else do we have to offer here? So then I want to show you, so if people are, just a visual that you can tell, that you can show people. when we talk about the water, and the water is important for people that have problems with water, you know, that they have flooding areas, but also people that don't want to do a lot of maintenance. And we always say that, you know, the majority of native plants, unless they're specifically wetland plants, the majority of native plants, once their roots grow after the first couple of years, they require very little maintenance. They don't want fertilizer. Don't fertilize native plants. They like the crappy clay soil that we have here. This is what they evolved with. So don't fertilize them. Fertilizing them can make them flop over. But they also don't require near as much water once their roots are established. Here are the roots of your typical non-native plants, a non-native fountain grass, a non-native daylily, spirea, compared to the native plants, to the root systems of many of our native plants. And you can see how much deeper those roots go. They absorb a lot more water, and they can get the water from deeper, so you don't have to be out there watering them all the time. And look at the roots of grass. I mean, it's like, look at the roots of grass compared to a 9-bark shrub. I mean, you want to, you know, get rid of some water, or you want something that you don't have to water very much, plant the 9-bark shrub, give it a year or two, you never have to water that thing. And it's gorgeous. And here's another one, root systems of some of the prairie plants or the native plants that we're recommending. These root systems are amazing. And just so you know, these perennials and small shrubs, these are fibrous roots. These aren't like, even though they're big, they're fibrous. They're not the kind of roots that are going to damage sidewalks or damage, you know, driveways or foundations. You know, we're not talking the big, thick tree roots. These are, so they're not damaging roots, but they just go down very deep to get water, so you don't have to be watering them very much. So if somebody doesn't have a green thumb, I bet you that they're going to be much more likely to be able to grow native plants than they would have ever been to grow some of the popular non-native varieties. And then I want to get back to, okay, so we're talking about these native plants, and I'm showing you lists of these native plants for different purposes. But then they're going to want to know more about them. And where do they go? And we're very happy with, and we're going to be adding more photos to this as we can, but we have our Native Plant Selector up and running. And that's on our website under Resources, Native Plant Selector. And so if you click on that, what we did is we made like a database of native plants in our area. But this isn't a comprehensive list of all of the native plants. That's been done, that's around, you can find that. What we did is we vetted native plants for ones that, and you know, Mark, who is our native plant expert, who for years worked at the Morton Arboretum, he kind of set the plants because he had firsthand knowledge of working with all of our native plants for many years. So we came up with this list of not all native plants that are suitable and will look good and that people will be happy with in smaller urban and suburban landscapes. So if you stick with this list, you're not going to get some crazy 10-foot thing that takes over the block. You know, all native plants are beautiful, but not all native plants are beautiful in a suburban front yard. So stick with these. And so you can click on, there's grasses and sedges, and you can see some of the ones that have been listed on here and see what they look like. Then we go, like if we go into flowering perennials, and you can look at some of the beautiful flowering ones that we have and learn more about what they like, what their benefits are. So if somebody sees something on that list, they can look right up here and find out more about it. We also have shrubs. These are shrubs that aren't going to get 50, 30 feet tall and what have you. So you see what the flowers look like. You see how big they grow, like this viburnum is just, wonderful for our ecosystem, wonderful for pollinators, wonderful for birds. It gets to be 6 to 10 feet tall. It gets less tall than a burning bush. So, and very easy to trim, just like people trim a burning bush. So why not get the burning bushes out and get some more of these viburnums in? Black chokeberry, an amazing, beautiful shrub in the fall. So we have a lot of shrubs listed here. There's a few vines. And then we have trees. Now the trees, this is the section that we're not done with for now. We have just listed small landscape trees. In the off season, we're going to add to this, and it's kind of a big endeavor to add all the varieties of the native shade trees, so that we will be adding at a different time. And then if somebody, let's say that somebody wants to go on here and say, okay, so I don't know much about this, but I'm looking for flowering plants, and I have an area that is full sun, drought tolerant, and it stays short. It doesn't get more than like 3 feet tall. And you'll come up with a list of plants that fit that will do well in that criteria. You can also narrow it down by season of interest or ecological significance as well.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So you had the lists on the other sheets, which I think are great. It's nice to, if you're trying to, if you have an HOA, for example, and you're trying to change things and give them recommendations, I think it's great to have just like a set list of, hey, these are appropriate and they're not crazy. Are the plants that we're recommending there, do they line up with what's in the Native Plant Selector? Like, can we?
They do. So like when we like they'll all be in the Native Plant Selector.
Okay.
Like when we made that one about, specifically about for wet areas. I mean, you're going to find most of those if you went in here, whether it be full sun, part sun, or shade, and you said flood tolerant, well, those are gonna come up.
Okay.
Depending on the height. So those will be in here. Also, the ones that are going to be good for HOAs or the easy ones, they'll be in there. Now, remember, everything in here has been vetted as it's not going to be too great, too crazy, too big, too aggressive for smaller landscapes. But of course, there's levels of that. So the ones that are on that HOA of those are like really safe. Those aren't going to spread any. They're just like, they just sit there so nice and behaved. They're just lovely. And then the ones that we talk about for being easy plants. A lot of these are pretty easy, but those are ones that I don't know if you could kill them. So that's to really get people with some success and people who are really just not truly beginners, some good safe ones for them to work with.
That makes
As a
sense.
rule,
So
if you stick with any plants that are within the Native Plant Selector, the average person who has some interest in plants is going to be happy with all of these.
One thing that I see in other plant selectors that I really appreciate is knowing which ones are really liked by rabbits or deer, or so that that you need to kind of protect them or fence them off when they're young. I think I lost some New Jersey teas over the winter, so I'm really bummed about that.
Yeah, let me see if I put that in here. So let me see. I want to get where you can actually search by name on here too. So Mary is still kind of working with the
I saw the search box in the sidebar, and I
look
think
at what I put here,
works.
Kathy. Look what I put here for New Jersey tea.
Oh, there it is. I see it.
Protect from rabbits for the first 2 years.
You know what? I had it fenced off with chicken wire, and I don't know if they hopped over it. or not.
Oh, those are really crazy ones, because the first year I put it in and I didn't protect it at all. And man, that first winter, they just took it down to nubs and it came back. And then I did put fencing around it. And last year they didn't bother it. And I think I'll leave the fencing up one more year. And I've been told that once that they get bigger and they get more woody, then the rabbits will leave it alone.
That's what I hear too. So it's possible the nubs might come back and regrow.
Yeah, so I mean, as a rule, plants are, native plants don't necessarily attract rabbits or deer any more than non-native plants, but you can say that like this plant is deer resistant, and a lot of them say that, but I've read that, and I've had, I know people who've had deer eat or rabbits eat a plant that they say is rabbit resistant. So it's like, you can't be sure. It all depends on how hungry they are, how much other food they have. But if there's ones that are a real problem, and New Jersey tea seems to be like Snickers bars to rabbits. I mean, they just are crazy about it. And then we will mention in there. Yeah. But that's a really good point, because some people live in areas where just deer is just a nightmare. So that's a great point. And I think what would work is even if we didn't have it in the native plant selector, even if it was hard, to determine, because it can vary by what other food is available, how hungry they are, and what they've gotten used to, and so on. But it would be good for us to have as one of our resources for the one of our native plant ambassador tools, to add a list of the most deer resistant native plants, the most rabbit resistant native plants. That would be a great addition for people. So that's on the list. That was a great idea. I want to add that. That would really help people. And then, like, I think when you and I were talking, Kathy, you had the idea, and I think it's a wonderful idea, and I've talked to people about this. And when we find somebody who is more visually creative than myself, we would like to create signs that we can put on here as ambassador tools that people can print, put in a plastic sleeve, staple it to a wood stick, and put in your garden. And so that people that are walking by or they're seeing it, and it can say, this garden is helping our declining pollinators, or these leaves, in the fall, if you don't rake all of your leaves out of your beds, within these leaves are next year's lightning bugs, just like things like that, to try to enlighten or educate people that are seeing your garden, why it's important and what you're doing and what the purpose is behind it. And that some of the stuff that they think is messy, like twigs there all year, start to understand why you're doing that, why you don't do a fall cleanup. And so to have signs like that we can download, I think is another really exceptional idea.
Yeah,
And
I've been thinking about that too. Even just some like cute, catchy phrases or illustrations, just to draw people's attention as they walk by your house or something like that.
yes,
To get them
yes,
thinking. Or
yes.
just that conversation.
Yes, I would. And so, but it has to be cute. And that's why you don't want me to make it, so it has to be something that's like, yeah, that's cute and catches attention. And, so somebody's walking by and they're thinking, oh my God, that person's a slob. Look at all their leaves. They never got their leaves out of their garden. And then all of a sudden they see the sign. Oh no, that's intentional. We're leaving those leaves there because, and so I think that is something that is on our radar, to try to get on there when we feel we have somebody who has the time and talent to do it right. But I love the thing of the list of the most deer and rabbit resistant plants. That's something that we can add, I think, pretty soon. I can give that to Mark, and I'm sure he can he can come up with a list of those. So that's a great idea. And again, this is just evolving. So this is the beginning. And so as you're out there having the conversations with people and using some of these tools, if something comes up, oh, something I didn't show you. And if something comes up and you think that there's something else that would be beneficial, please let us know and we will try to create it so that it would be on here. Here's what.
That's awesome. I
This
think for the native plant selector, what I struggle with is the design idea and kind of knowing what goes together really nicely. So if you're planting something, you know, like the time of year or the bloom time or just the colors, you know, kind of pairs, what wines pair well with this kind of food kind of idea, you know?
And let me show this, and then I'm going to go back and show you something about that. This is the last thing on there that I missed. This Sue inspired this. She said, you know, some of the true and false. What are some of the rebuttals you get from people that native plants are weeds? What do you say when someone says, "Oh, native plants are weeds"? And then you just say, no, a native plant is one that is part of the balance of nature that has developed over hundreds of years. And, you know, guess what? Most common weeds are actually non-native plants. Wildflowers are the same thing as native plants. How many people get those wildflower seed mixes? And that's false. A wildflower is a flower growing freely without human intervention. Many plants come up on their own in natural lands. Some of them are native, however, many are non-native and were at some time introduced from another part of the country or world. Over time, they became naturalized in our landscapes. And sometimes these naturalized plants become invasive and problematic. So some wildflowers, I mean, that just means that they naturalize. They're coming up on their own and they're not necessarily native. Queen Anne's lace is a good, you know, a good example of that. That's a naturalized wildflower that is not native here. It's not a real invasive problem, so it's not necessarily a problem plant, but it's not a native plant. Now there are other ones that have naturalized, like, you know, buckthorn and burning bush and pear trees and so on, that have become naturalized in our natural landscapes, in our forest preserves, and they are invasive and they are taking over and choking out the native species. This one I love. Native plants will attract many bees that are dangerous to have in my yard. This is a big old false. I mean, native plants, they will attract bees, but you know, bees are a vital part of our ecosystem and critical to our very existence. We must learn to coexist with bees. Fortunately, you can tell these naysayers, bees in your garden mean you no harm. Native bees are peaceful and rarely sting. Most native bees don't even have a stinger, and most bee stings come from the yellow jacket wasps. Yellow jackets are more attracted to your can of soda or hamburger than they are to your flowers. Bees are not aggressive when they forage. If they are a bee species that has a colony, such as European honeybees and bumblebees, they will protect their nest. However, they're not going to nest in the area where there's a lot of traffic in a garden of other foraging insects. You're more likely to find a bee's nest behind your garage in a quiet corner of your yard than in your flower garden. And most actual bee, if you're actually stung by a bee and not a yellow jacket wasp, it's usually from stepping on a bee that is foraging in the lawn. But you know, you can be gardening around these flowers or sitting around these flowers, and they're paying no attention to you. They're not in aggressive mode there. And as I said, most native bees don't even sting. And if somebody is really concerned about that, a good thing to do is put your taller plants, like because they have kids or something, put your flowering plants in the back and put a row of like prairie dropseed or some kind of nice sedges in the front of the flowering plants so that your kids aren't brushing by the plants with the bees on, if you're really concerned. Native plants are too aggressive and they're gonna take over my entire yard. False. Some native plants can be very tall or spread vigorously through rhizomes or self-seeding. These species are not appropriate for smaller urban and suburban landscapes. However, many species on the Native Plant Selector are not aggressive and look lovely and appropriate in home and business landscapes. And then finally, I need to remove my entire lawn and replace it with native plants to make a difference. No, that's absolutely not true. We can make a big difference just doing a native tree or shrub or putting in a small pollinator garden. And you mentioned, and what was that you mentioned, Kathy, that you would love to have like plant pairings, like what goes well together. And this is something, and maybe we can use some of this information after the plant sale. So we have somebody new who came on to our team, and her name's Shamim, and she's creating, I mean, this is going to be like a crazy plant sale. I mean, I'm looking so forward to this. I mean, we're not only are we going to have, like, I think Possibility Place is bringing 4,500 plants to sell that day, but she's creating signs and sections. Now that we have all these plants that are going to be available individually that day, she's creating like, here's a trio of plants that look lovely together. Here's some plants that make good companions with each other. So trying to organize the plants with signs in a way that makes it easier for people to create an attractive garden. And that is something that would be also good, I think, when she's done doing that, to add some of that as a tool of, you're right, of what are some good companion plants, what are, you know, this, and this, just to keep it real simple for people. Plant this, and this, and they look beautiful together. You know, that would be, that I could see that would be very helpful. And then if you go to, and then you can also, how did I get off of the website? Let me get back on. Another thing that I want to be sure that you guys know is there, if anybody is asking you, oh, I don't know how to design it, oh, I can't afford to hire a designer. I get it. That's why if you go on our website, you can find under our plant sale, you can find these 4 designs. So they can use one of these designs to create a native plant garden for an area in their yard. And then we also have last year's designs. So we have a total of 8 designs that people can choose from and create with native plants. So that this should help people. And we'll just keep adding to this year by year. Any questions or suggestions? What do you think of this? Do you think this is helpful? And I love the feedback of some other tools that you think would be helpful, and we definitely will work on adding that.
One thing that came to mind, because I was looking at the Native Plant Selector, which is awesome to have, just because nothing like that exists anywhere else, and I've looked a lot. The search, this is like a small thing. I wish I could search across all the categories all at once, like if I'm looking for something, because, you know, like sometimes in one of these lists, or, you know, maybe someone tells me about a plant, I may not know exactly what kind of plant it is. You know, like I just have a name and that's all I know about
So
it.
you would like a search bar where you could type a name in and see it if it comes up.
Yeah, and I did find the search in the sidebar, but I think it only searches within that category that's currently active. And I think it could be really helpful to just be able to type in whatever, and even, you know, like with the rabbit deer resistance thing, like just being able to type that in at the top and have it search across all of the plants rather than having to switch the categories and look in each one.
Right.
That would be really helpful.
Yeah, that would be helpful, and definitely having a search bar, and I think that I would like to, that's something that I would like Mark to work on, to get a list of, like, the top 10 safest, deer and rabbit resistant plants for people that have like a really bad problem. And we're never going to completely eliminate it, but there are some people that really have a bad problem. And if we could work on maybe another ecological significance, deer and rabbit resistant, adding that as a parameter, if that's what people are really looking for, that would be very beneficial.
Mhm.
And I agree with you, it would be nice to have a search bar, so people could just search by name if they're coming on here and they want to search for a particular thing. Like, even when I realized that was kind of clumsy when I was looking for New Jersey tea, because looking that up to see what was written there, it's kind of, if you're just looking up that, you don't want to, like, preferably scroll through the whole thing.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, just like if you're looking for something quickly and
Mm-hmm.
just want to see if it's a recommended plant or not, because maybe someone told you about it or what have
Right.
you.
You're
Yeah.
right. But I'm very excited about this being on here. And again, this is going to be another work in progress to keep nuancing it and improving it. But I don't know, like you said, Michelle, I don't know of any other native plant selector that or native plant finder that is specific to smaller landscapes, that is really for the home and business owner, and not the restoration people. And you look on those and it's like, oh God, I'm afraid, and this is, I'm very happy to have this be a tool, because that really is what we do. We're trying to reach out to home and business owners that have small landscapes. So
Yeah, I think even the imagery is really helpful, because a lot of the native specific I guess databases that I've seen are they don't have photos,
they're
or it's just
boring.
using the Latin name. Yeah, it's just really hard to
And we
find
got,
anything or visualize what it will end up looking like. I end up just Googling it. So that's, you're kind of having to reference two places rather than having it all in one. I
and
guess one
some,
other critique, if we could have more photos,
well, that's funny
would
that you
be
said that.
awesome.
I was gonna say to you, because you'll be excited that, if ever a time that you can, come back and get involved, you'd
Yeah, I'm
love
hoping
working with
to. I need to figure out one day a week that I can have just a
devote.
few hours.
You need some adult time, right? But
Yeah.
we
I'm
have
getting past the hard part, although sleep I think is just going to be hard forever. But
yeah, you don't get to sleep for
yeah, and
5
she's a
years
good
at
sleeper.
least.
I can't complain. I really shouldn't complain because she's good. But
But Shamim, you're gonna love the opportunity to work with Shamim, who's our interpretive outreach director and librarian. And
oh,
all
cool.
the problem that we were having with having somebody work on the website. Well, now everything is in the picture, because we did a talk at the center in Palos Park.
Oh,
And
awesome.
somebody came to see it, and she joined afterward, and she sent in a volunteer. She signed the volunteer form, and she's a web designer who specializes in WordPress and do we need
Oh,
any
hey,
help.
that worked out.
And she's amazing, and she already redesigned our logo. She redesigned our homepage. She's nuancing the whole website, and she took a look at the Native Plant Selector, and she said, when I get through the website, we're going to add more photos to the Native Plant Selector. So
Yeah.
she's already on
I
it.
know. I was even thinking, like, because what can I do with a 4-month-old baby? Well, I could wear her around and take pictures of stuff. Like, that's something I could probably do.
Yeah,
But,
well, I was
I've been trying to
surprised.
take her places, so I could probably visit some gardens that, we've worked on and just take photos of stuff.
And she's getting a lot of photos. She's got she's finding these amazing photos on Adobe that I didn't have
nice.
access to, and she's finding some really cool photos on there. So ultimately what we would like to do is, like with Arrowwood viburnum, we want a picture of what it looks like when it's flowering. We want a picture of what the fruit looks like, and we want a picture of the fall color.
Right. Yeah, that's always a hard one to find, the fall color.
Yes.
important.
And you can find that kind of cool stuff in plant catalogs, regular plant catalogs, but when it comes to native plants and you're looking online, really hard to find good visuals of what they look like.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
always struggle with finding pictures of what the entire plant looks
Yes,
like as a
Oh,
whole.
yeah.
So I'd like to see how big it might be or how small or something. And, you know, they get the details in close, but not, they don't zoom out in the photos.
it's very hard. When I was looking through all of the plants, I was trying to like you see hyssop, I tried not to do just an up close of the flower. Or, but some of them were like virtually impossible. They may not have been the most attractive picture of it, but I wanted people to see, here's what, this big leafed aster looked like. It's only 12 inches tall. It's short. I didn't want to just zone in on the flower, but some of them were really, almost impossible. But now Lexi is finding all these cool photos on what did I say?
Adobe?
Adobe. And so I think it's going to be easy to get now to get more, shots of these different plants,
great.
which is going to help.
Kathy, I didn't realize this year's plants packages were different than last year's. So that's nice that there's more designs on the website for
Yeah,
people.
so now we have 8 designs, and so really it's like, and we're gonna, once the plant sale is over, we will combine them all. We'll take the ones from this year, we'll be taking the plant sale page down, we'll be taking the ones from this year, and they'll be added to the garden designs. But for right now, they're in 2 separate places. So the 4 that we have from last year, for small gardens, here's a full sun to be like along a foundation. Then there is the full sun pollinator garden, partial shade pollinator garden, and then the full sun part shade rain garden for a wet area. And then the designs that we have this year for the plant sale were another partial shade pollinator garden with a little different plants. This was our first time of having a full shade pollinator garden, which was real popular because a lot of people have some very shady areas, problem areas, we all have. A garden that is specifically monarch loving plants to try to help out the monarchs, and another full sun pollinator garden. So yeah, so there's 8 designs on here that all have about 18 plants. So it's helpful to get people started and to have an idea of how to arrange things. Here you have, these plants are all designed to look good together and to flower at different times of the year, so you always have color. And so this is a good way for beginners to to take some of the guesswork out of it.
Does the Monarch one, the one for this year, does it have milkweed plants that are already going to be partially grown and then
It does have milkweed plants. It has butterfly milkweed and swamp milkweed.
okay. It'll be fun to see the day of the sale.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Any
Well,
other
I was gonna
feedback?
say, I think good talking points, I like what you have and, pointing out data, but not overwhelming. And I like, Sue heard this, but, the other couple ladies might not have. When we were at the, workshop, tell me the name again, in February, I'm having a mind blank.
Wild things?
Wild things. One of the ones I went to, this guy's a professor, not of the plant world. He's a professor, and then he has his yard is very full of native plants. His wife was from a farm, and he said, people stop and ask questions, and they're like, "Oh, I would like to have that." And he said one of the best things, is if they're like, "Oh, I would like that. I wish I had some of those flowers." Give them some of the seeds at the end of the year, and so by giving it to them, maybe they're going to plant native. So people are always walking by asking questions, about his yard, and some you can have more of a conversation with than with others. But so I thought that was a great approach because, they're like, "Oh, I like that," and if you package up your seeds and give it to them, then maybe they'll, you know,
Right,
they're
right.
they're more likely to do it that way than to go out and buy the plants themselves and hunt it down, like you said, finding a store that would offer them. So
Absolutely, the good
Uh,
point. And I'm just reading some of the comments that were here. Germany, is really that true, Kathy? Germany banned all pesticides in public areas. That's awesome. That's
Yeah,
really,
I just read an article, I think in NPR about it. They're way ahead of us.
yes. Well, and they're way ahead of us, but their problem, you know, because they're so small and you know, built up and you know, for longer. I mean, we're so relatively new compared to them, that their problem was so far gone before they're trying to take, I guess, some really drastic efforts, but we're not far behind them. I mean, we're catching up with, you know, how things have been dying off. So, and yeah, I mean, mail ordering from Prairie Moon Nursery and Prairie Nursery is, you know, you can be rest assured. I know a lot of people don't like to mail order plants, and I know that shipping can kind of be, you know, can run up the cost, but they have very healthy plants at those places. And if you're looking for another really good avenue to learn about some of the native varieties, their websites are a great resource too, and the different native plants. Does it seem, do you feel like some of these tools that we're having here, would this help you talk to people or share with people or help people that you know start planting native? Do you feel like these resources are helpful?
Yeah, I think it's great, Kath. It's a good job.
Yeah, I
Okay.
think the plant recommendations especially are helpful to just be able to send it. I actually just sent the link to the plant selector as well to my sister-in-law. She's thinking about doing a landscaping project and wanted to know what would grow well.
Mm-hmm.
So I think just being able to kind of send a link easily. I mean, I don't know if she'll use it or not, but just the ease of sharing it is, I think, a really key.
Well, I did, I took a note about the deer and the rabbit resistant, a note about like a search, you know, a search to be able to search more easily. And then obviously we would like signs at some point. But really, anytime you think of anything and you say, you know what, I was having a conversation and it would really help me if you had such and such, please send it in and we'll try to get, oh, look. Oh, look at
Cute.
her.
Sorry, I'm derailing. Yeah, they're back. I have to go, but I thought
Okay. Well, it was wonderful to see you again, and I hope I see more of you. Hello, sweet girl.
Sweet girl. Yeah, it was really great to join. I'll have to message you, Kathy, about you know, when I'll have availability and stuff to get involved again.
Wonderful, wonderful. I think you'll love the experience with Shamim and Lexi on board, because they'll talk, they talk your language. I talk a different language. I don't know what it is, but it's a different language.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, we can talk shop.
You guys can talk shop. Okay.
You can say something, sure.
I like Luna. I love her.
You love her. Aw.
Do you love your new sister? Oh, I heard you're a really good big brother. That's what I heard.
Yeah. All right. Well, have a good night, everyone.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Any closing comments? I put my email address in the chat, and you know, just email me directly if you think of something or you have a comment later. Again, this is going to be evolving, and we hope to add more and more to this as time goes on to just help all of us try to get the word out.
Thanks, Kathy. This is good. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Well, you all have a wonderful evening, and I hope to
Yes.
be in contact with you guys soon or see you down the road sometime this summer.
Sounds
Thank
good.
you.
All
Bye,
right.
everyone.
Everybody.
Bye, thank you.
Bye, thank you.
Bye-bye.